Road podcast, telling the stories of the South Texas racers from the past and present.
Hello, my name is James Parks, and welcome to the Thunder Road podcast. We are filming here at the Top Hat Signs and Design Studio. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Proline Fabrication, 112 Bodies, S&S Monuments, and of course, Top Hat Signs and Design. And on this episode, we have Ray Allen Kulhanek, multi-time ASCS champion, local racer, and shock builder. He's going to tell us his tales. He's going to tell us his stories from the beginnings of being a tricycle motor all the way to being an ASCS champion. And on this episode of the Thunder Road podcast, we have Ray Allen Kulhanek. Ray Allen has raced just about anything and everything with wheels, with tires in his steering wheel, I should say. So with that being said, Ray Allen, thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about young Ray Allen. Tell us a little bit about how you and how you got involved in racing. Obviously, we all know the Kulhanek name. The family has been around forever. So tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Well, this has been kind of a repeat thing. I was born and raised.
Born in a race car?
Pretty much for the better part. 2 weeks after I was born, I was at a racetrack. But no, my entire family has raced. So from my grandpa, my grandma, uncles, aunts, my dad. Even my sisters, we all kind of got into BMX and stuff or whatever all together, me and the girls and cousins, and which I was the only boy out of all of the grandkids. So it's kind of funny that I was pretty much kind of the only one that really could honestly just take over the racing ranks.
It worked out in your favor at that point.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of your early racing experiences. Obviously, you didn't just jump into a race car. I don't know where the Power Wheel situation was back then, but I heard there might have been some tricycle racing.
Yeah, no, we didn't do the Power Wheel stuff back then. So I was, I guess, three years old, and they had tricycle races every year at the Brazoria County Fair. And anyhow, so at the age of 3, I won, I guess, considered my first race. I won my first race on a tricycle.
So you were the official tricycle motor.
Yeah, I was the motor. Yeah. No,
Awesome.
And then the following year or whatever, they wouldn't even let me race in the tricycle deal. So
you got kicked out of the tricycle races?
One year is all I got.
You were blackballed early.
I was early.
So at 3 to 4 years old, you were blackballed.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's crazy. So after you get kicked out of the tricycle racing, what do we do from there?
Honestly, I went to races every weekend, but I didn't. Really and honestly, racing around our area, which my hometown was Danbury, Texas. So the closest racetrack that we had to home was actually in Alvin, and at that time was actually called Triple C Raceway, which was later named to Texas Motor Speedway and then to Texas Thunder Speedway. And anyway, so they didn't really have any go-kart tracks per se to really race at that age. So pretty much, I guess, from the age of 5, I just really played sports. I was really, really, really good at baseball. I kind of wish now that I would have probably pursued that, but
dreams can still come true. Like the Hooks have tryouts every now and then.
I'm a little old.
Don't tell them how old you are. Just swing that bat, son.
Right.
If you hit the ball far enough, it doesn't matter how fast you can run.
That's what they say.
No, I'm proof of that.
Understand. But no, I ran, I guess my first race after the whole tricycle thing really wasn't until I was 11 years old, and we got into, I take that back. At 5, I'm forgetting all about my motocross stuff. 5, I made my first race on a dirt bike. Won my first race on a dirt bike. Forgot about that.
Like a 125 or something?
Yeah, no. Well, 50 PW50.
Hey, a race is a race. Yeah. Dudley still rides a PW50 today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, we won first race. I can't believe I forgot about that.
And where was this track at?
That was actually, so I think it was called Rio Bravo, which was a track next door to Big H Speedway.
Really? Okay.
So, and they also ran what they called the National Modified Midget Association, which was
my dad had one of those.
Yeah, the 2-stroke mini sprints. My Uncle David and I both raced on the same night, both won on the same night. So that was pretty cool. I only got to do that twice.
That's cool.
My mom didn't like it too much.
No, you needed a cage.
Yeah,
cages a must. So you we're gonna say you mastered the tricycles, you mastered the PW50s.
Yeah.
And then we decided we're gonna do something
that went
different.
on hiatus. I went on the sports deal and then got into BMX racing at age 11.
Okay.
Yeah. So we kind of bounced around doing that. I traveled all over doing that.
BMXing.
BMX, yeah.
Did you do like stunt bike stuff too, or just
no.
BMXing? No.
I've always been really competitive, just about racing, going fast, being the first one across the line.
So tell us about some of your BMX accomplishments. So tell us some of the stuff there. Were you dominant in that as well?
Locally, yeah. I know so you start out like in a novice still, go from that to intermediate, then to expert, and then after that would be considered pro. Of course, I got out of BMX before I was old enough to become pro. But I mean, I won a lot. I don't even remember how many BMX.
I sponsored a little girl one time that raced like BMX bikes, but didn't have pedals. They called them gliders or something.
Yeah.
It was the coolest thing I ever saw. They were little kids. They were just rolling down these hills, not a pedal one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Actually, they had a big like double points 2-day weekend BMX race here in Corpus Christi that I came down here and actually won.
No, there's a lot of BMX racers in Corpus actually. The Heinemans, the Mrazeks. There's a lot of BMX racing here.
This town is the first town that really, really, really chopped my last name up the worst.
Really? How'd they say it? Can't even say it that bad.
It was Kubanet.
Man, that's close.
Where in the hell is there a B in my name?
We make things up as we go. It's Corpus Christi. All right, so now we've done our BMX stuff. We got our last name chopped up, and then we're then where are we at? We're racing cars. We're going back to sports.
No, I say doing sports basically all the way through high school. But I got into racing cars, and I guess I made my first laps in a car in '96. I ran, I think, like a handful of races in a Ford Pinto car that my uncle had built.
Let's call him Uncle David. He is his own guy. Let's give him his props.
100% his own person for sure. I talked to him this morning, by the way.
No, it was
comical.
He was a handful.
Yeah. So anyway, he had put that car together. I ran, like I said, a handful of races there, and then in '97 and '98. My dad had built a Toyota Celica that I ran all year in '97 and '98. Won, I don't know how to remember exactly, but I guess between the 2 years, it was like 20-something.
That was at Triple
wins.
C?
That was actually at the time that the track was named Texas Thunder by that time.
Okay, but same facility. Somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did what we're going to call the mini stocks now. Obviously, that class has progressed and become front runners and stuff, but those are mini stocks from what I can remember. A good friend of mine, Robbie Daniels, raced a Toyota Celica. Those cars were pretty quick on the dirt, and I know they ran a lot of that stuff in the asphalt too. So you were racing kind of around your local area. You were pretty much dominant in that area. I assumed that there was other rides available, maybe some full-size fender cars, maybe some open-wheel stuff. Like, how did that transition for young Ray the kid to actually become Ray Allen?
So I guess my first car owner that gave me a shot at something was at the end of '98. He had a stock car, and of course at that time in the Houston area, I guess the biggest claimed race to go to was the Texas Grand. Mm-hmm. So my first Texas Grand that I attended was in 1998 in a big body long wheelbase Monte Carlo against Camaros and
every bit of 112 inches on the wheelbase.
113. Let's get it right.
Go.
So anyhow, we ended up going and actually running really well at that race. Considering the circumstances, and from that led to a street stock ride for the following year, and we ended up winning, I think, like 11 features and Rookie of the Year, which I didn't even get to start racing that year until like April or May.
So you really just kind of took to it. It came naturally to you.
First night in the car, I won.
And whose car was that?
The guy's name was Gary Pogue.
Is he still around?
He is. He's health-wise or whatever is going downhill a little bit. Kind of, I don't know if it's dementia but anyhow.
Those things kind of take over. But like I was telling and talking about in the interview earlier, like in my eyes, anybody that's ever been a sponsor will always be a sponsor because they helped you along the lines,
Yeah,
and car
absolutely.
owners and that kind of stuff too. So,
Yeah.
so you did that kind of racing, full body stuff. And I'm assuming at this point you're still staying in the Houston area.
We were racing at, by that time, Alvin had closed down, so we were racing at 105 Speedway, I guess, on most Saturday nights.
Yeah.
And then, of course, off weekends, we would go to Battleground, go to Beaumont, over to Golden Triangle, which at that time was Speedway 90. Then, of course, Houston Raceway Park got built. I guess it was around 2000. And so we ran out there. Me and that car owner ended up splitting ways. And I ended up becoming friends, or my grandparents actually became friends with Mark Brown, which was Chris Brown's dad. And anyhow, they became friends, and he became a fan or whatever. I was still a young kid at the time. And
How old were you roughly?
I was 17.
Okay.
And so actually for my 18th, he ended up buying a car for me because that car owner.
When you say a car, what kind of car?
Street stock.
Street stock.
Yeah.
All right.
And then actually like 2 months later was my 18th birthday, and he had bought a modified for my 18th birthday. So that's when I made
Not a bad present.
No,
Not
it
a
was
bad
awesome.
present at all.
Pretty good.
You mentioned somebody in your little story there. You mentioned your grandma.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of getting to meet your grandma at Gulf Coast Speedway, I guess in our debut of our mini sprint. But I had the opportunity to meet her, and man, she was really neat in my aspect of hearing her telling the stories, hearing her telling basically the tales of what was Ray Allen and how you got to where you were. And some of the stuff she told me, I had no clue. Some of the stuff she told me, you probably don't want to know. But no, but she definitely, I'm going to say a character, but not at all in a bad way. Like, she is her own person.
Yeah.
She knows what she wants. She's all about racing.
Yeah.
And I'm not even
100%.
sure how old she is or young she is.
Okay, so she is actually, she's 40 years older than me. So she is 80 years old right now.
80 years old. And she had the coolest shoes on. You want to tell the folks about her shoes?
Oh, dude, she still has those things. I don't remember what they're called. They're like
They're racers. They say racers
yeah.
on the side.
So anyway, my first
Don't bang on the counter. The
championship,
boys will be mad.
my first championship was in '97, and that's when those shoes, I guess, came out. They found them either in some kind of catalog or on the.
She was sporting them.
I don't remember where they found them, but anyway. So honestly, we all in the family that race, we all had a pair of them.
Well, she still has hers. Where's
She
yours?
still has them. I have no idea.
There's the deal.
But
There's
they're
the
black with checkers on them, and they're called racers.
Now, we're going to talk about your grandma a little more when we get to your open
Yeah.
wheel stuff. But right now, it's your 18th birthday. I assume this modified wasn't in a box. Probably didn't even have a ribbon on it. But now there's a modified and some opportunity for not Ray the child, but Ray Allen, the grown man now. So let's talk about how that deal worked out for you.
So, like I said, on 18th birthday, I didn't even get to see the car in person on my 18th birthday. I had to unbox. So it was like a box, like yay big, inside of another box, inside of another box,
That
inside
old
of another
gag.
box, wrapped in duct tape.
All right.
No knives. I had to pull out of the part.
wanted you to
Anyway,
work for it.
it was a picture and a frame of the modified. So we went and ran the first night in it, and I finished second first night in it. And then,
And where
of
did
course,
you run that at?
At 105.
105.
Yeah.
And what do you remember? What kind of modified it was?
It was a Smileys.
A Smileys car.
chassis, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Old Z-Link with a fifth
You were
arm,
smiling
and
in the Smileys.
I was.
That's awesome.
Ear to ear.
Should have made a commercial for him right there.
Oh, I got plenty of years of experience with Smileys, I promise.
All right, so the Smileys modified deal, you went out, you ran. What did you do in that deal? You made get some accomplishments in that car.
Yeah, I didn't race it very long, so I pretty much stayed in the seat of the modified for roughly about a year, or no, a little less than a year. I guess my accomplishment or whatever in that deal was the end of the year. They had I guess it was called the Fall Classic or something like that at 105. It was a 5,000 to win race, and I ended up winning that race. And that was, outrunning the likes of Howard Willis and Robbie Starnes and
Big names in that area.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
also big names in Texas, but in that area, those names were pretty staunch. Like those were the guys to beat.
It was a pretty tough fought race or whatever.
What do they think about this young kid that was once just a tricycle motor coming up there and kind of making them work a little harder?
At that time, I mean, I had the name just because of my last name and because of my grandparents and the rest of my family. But I hadn't really, I guess I don't feel like I had really established myself, in the likes of their eyes yet, other than they.
Do you feel like the last name made it easier for you or made it harder for you at times?
Harder. Yeah. No, there's big shoes to fill, knowing, Papa's accomplishments, Grandma's accomplishments, my Uncle David's accomplishments. They, everybody was pretty well established that they were, front running, people in racing and they won a lot.
So who's the slowest Kulhanek? Don't say Grandma.
No,
I'll hit you. I'll hit you for her.
I don't really want to.
We'll come back to that.
I don't want to say it was my dad, but my dad never won as many races as
That's
the rest
all right.
of us.
We're just having a good time.
Yeah.
So the modified deal, you didn't stay in that very long.
No.
Why? What was the reasoning for that?
So this is the story of how Chris Brown got started in racing. So obviously, like I said, we met with Mark. And anyhow, Chris was going to school, and so he, was gone quite a bit. Anyhow, he ended up coming to the races to check it out, and we ended up putting my 4-cylinder mini stock back together because he was like, "Man, I think this is cool. I think I might want to try it."
You dug the old silica out of the weeds.
We dug silica out of the weeds, got it back up together and running. Told Mark, let him cut his teeth in this and make sure, he's for sure he wants to do that before, you go and dump money. So did that, and next thing you know, we're over the winter. We're building a brand new limited for him, and I stayed racing the modified. And
is
then
the Celica still around?
The Celica, it is around. I just don't know where it's at. It's somewhere back.
If anybody has seen Ray Allen Celica, let us know.
It is
the tricycle also. That could be worth worth a little bit. We get him to sign it.
Yeah, but so anyhow, I want basically until Memorial Day weekend of 2001, I had ran the modified for them, and more or less it turned into, man, I'd really want to, kind of sink the money into getting, Chris going and trying to get him going better. And so understand, so basically for about 2 months, I went without a ride at all. My family, we just never had a lot of money, and got fortunate enough to get put in the right situations that, talent got me rides, which is really hard to do now. Like, I mean, it's pretty unspoken of for, just a talented racer to be able to go and just catch a ride.
I think it's gotten harder. And in fact, I think Tony Stewart touched on that either this week or last week in his NASCAR deal, basically saying he wanted a guy that had the talent, didn't necessarily care how much money they had. Right. And it is hard, especially with the younger crop of racers that are coming up. They're starting so early.
I'm jealous of that. I wish I could have started earlier, but just the way of the times, the way things have changed. Kids are starting now. Shoot, it seems like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Rebel will be starting racing go-karts at 4.
Yeah,
and that was unheard of even for myself. I didn't actually start racing until I was 16.
Yeah.
I go to the go-kart track just like you do, and I see the younger and younger racers, and those guys, some of them are super talented and some of them aren't. That's just the way it is. Yeah. But how do you think that works for you? Like, how do you really get out there and say, I am Ray Allen, I do have this kind of talent, I'm still a factor, even with all these young bucks with stacks and stacks of cash coming behind them?
Be honest with you, I really don't know. I don't really know how to answer that one other than I guess I have a background and years of experience on top of, from basically around the time of me being 18 and racing for the Browns, my hand got forced in. I had to start learning how to work on my own cars. I was spoiled, at 14, 15, 16, 17 with having my Uncle David and my dad. Yeah. They were always in my back pocket to be able to make sure my race cars got around the racetrack. And which, like there's kids like the Whitakers, they got a good background and they they're bringing their kids up in the race cars that are already handling well, and that makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. Getting into a car that does what it's supposed to do versus getting into a car that has doing what it's supposed to do is a big deal. Yeah. So not taking anything away from the younger racers, but having a properly prepped race car is a big deal. It can make you or break you.
Absolutely. It's tough. You can sit back, and watch a lot of the kids that are in the go-karts that, you can see that they actually do have talent because they do overcome an ill handling cart. And so it's like, man, I'd really like to go help that kid out, like help him get going. But that's probably what's led me to where, I am now, as far as I had to learn how to work on my own stuff and how to set my cars up and pick up on everything that led me to where I am right now.
So pretty much what I know of Ray Allen is Ray Allen gets up in the morning in his race car.
It is race
and
car.
Ray Allen goes to bed in his race car.
It's race car.
Everything in between is just race car.
Pretty much.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's go back. So you did your I'm going to call it a stint. You did your stint with the Browns, racing for them, and then obviously their situation changed. You sat out a little bit, and then what happened at that point? Something had to get you back into the race cars because the tricycles were out.
So my lifelong dream from the time I was a little kid was I always wanted to race sprint cars. That was just always what I wanted to do. I just was fascinated with them, and
just because you saw them in the Houston area, and you're like, that's what we got to do.
My uncle David raced sprint cars and stuff with the Texas Super Sprinters when I was a little kid, and I always enjoyed it. So the 2-month stretch that I went without a ride, my dad was racing a limited modified for a man named Jerry Jackson, and he had an AC business. So the future car owner that I didn't know was going to happen, David Miller, his AC had gone out at his house, and he was, probably 5-10 miles down the road from Jerry's place. And anyhow, my dad went with Jerry to make the call to David Miller's house to go work on the AC. Well, the shop was open, and my dad walks by, sees the sprint cars, so he's walking around looking at it, and David walks in the shop, and he's like, well, what do you think? So my dad said, man, I wish I had the money to put my boy in one of these. He's always wanted to race one. He said, well, I know who your boy is. Tell him to come to the racetrack next week. He said, bring his stuff. I'll let him hot lap it. So Dad came back, and told me what was said.
You're never going to believe what just happened.
The following weekend, I showed up to the racetrack. I never spoke to him, in person or anything before, but I walked up carrying my helmet bag and said, hey, my dad said that
I could drive this car.
I could hot lap the car or whatever if I showed up with my racing stuff. And he said, well, yeah.
So what day do you think your dad made the deal with this gentleman? Roughly?
It was on a Saturday.
It was on a Saturday. So you had to wait a whole Saturday. You didn't sleep all week.
He waited until like midweek to tell me this.
I'm just saying, because the Ray Allen I know, he didn't sleep all week.
He waited until midweek to tell me. And so I showed up and got in the car and went out for hot laps. And
no, let's back up a little bit, because sprint cars are normal to you. Sprint cars are not normal to me. So you were a tricycle motor, and then you did your Celica, and then you did your fender car, and next thing you know, you're sitting in this monster. Tell the folks that don't know what a sprint car is what a sprint car is.
Hercules on wheels.
Pretty much. It doesn't want to be tamed. It can't be tamed.
They're not. It's just you can't drive them slow. The slower you drive them, the more ill handling they are, the harder they are to drive.
And they don't want to be driven.
No. You manhandle a sprint car the whole time, even under caution. Just holding one straight under caution is.
That's what I'm saying. I want the folks to understand. This is not something like you just get in. He's not driving a Cadillac. No, he's not driving an off-road buggy either. But what he's driving is a machine that's made to go fast. Yeah. It is not made to do anything else.
To me, like I said, I was raised around it, seen them, been around them. So like it wasn't. I didn't feel out of place, I guess. I didn't.
Intimidated?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's okay. I think those cars should be intimidating.
Well, I always say anytime you race and you're not afraid a little bit, then you're pretty much going to not have a good night. You kind of got to live on the edge of being afraid and pushing that limit. But yeah, no, I got in the car and went out hot lapped and come off the racetrack, and I don't know, I didn't feel like I just cut the fat hog in the ass, but I felt like I made okay laps. Well, anyhow, I get back to the pit stall, and he comes walking up grinning. He said, "Well, you want to race it?" I said, "Are you shitting me?" He's, "Yeah." I said, "Hell yeah." So first night in the car, I started 8th in the heat race, ran 4th, and then I guess we started about 10th or so in the feature. And of course, I ain't been in anything that's just gone that fast.
These are 360s,
it was a 360 motor on carburetor.
Okay.
So methanol. It was, I guess, the kind of the ending of the Texas Super Sprinter deal. They kind of transitioned from what they had used to be to the full size wings, full size wheels, and then up to a 360 cubic inch motor.
But still a powerful machine.
Still, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was probably about 600 horses or so in those.
So you raced that around the Houston area as well, stayed local a little bit?
I did. So I ran, David only let me run 4 races because he had a plan, I guess, in mind that I wasn't aware of at the time. But they had a rule: as long as you ran no more than 4 races, then you could compete for Rookie of the Year. So basically, he
had already planned that out for you.
Yeah, I had no idea. So I ran my 4 races. First night in the car, I, like I said, went 8th to 4th in the heat and didn't realize like how fast these things really were. And anyhow, I clipped an infield tire, knocked front end out of it, which I thought I just demolished the race car.
Was it hard to steer?
Yeah, you can't help it. So actually, all it was a couple of radius rods, and it was just back together. And so, anyways, I thought I tore the race car up really bad, and it was no big deal. But anyhow, the following week, we went to Gator over in Willis, and we ended up leading 3/4 of the race. I got past like 2 or 3 laps ago, ended up running second. Ran second one more time, and then had a 4th also. And he's like, "All right, we're done." I was like, "What?" So
I'm just getting the hang of this.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's when he told me, he's like, "I want you to come race for me full time next year." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So his plan was he wanted me to go out the following year and compete for a championship and win Rookie of the Year.
When you say compete locally, or
so we ran. Then we were running 105 Speedway at Cleveland, Gator Speedway, and then Speedway 90, which was Golden Triangle in Beaumont.
All right, so you guys traveled around. You did that. Did you end up winning the championship that next year?
The following year, I did end up winning the championship. We won, I think, somewhere 11, 13 features. Championship there at Gator, and then championship over at 105 as well.
So 2 championships.
They did track championships.
Y'all ran like Fridays and Saturdays, I'm assuming?
That and alternating
weekends. Okay. So after you did that, you kind of dominated in the sprint car deal. Obviously, you transitioned into some, I'm going to say, faster sprint cars for maybe not having the correct terminology, but tell us a little bit about that transition.
So I guess, it was 02, my rookie year. 03, we did one more year with the carbureted 360 deal. I won 3 championships or track championships that following year. I think 13, 14 features, somewhere around there. And then in 2004, was our first rookie year with ASCS series, Gulf South Region series.
So the ASCS is a traveling series?
That was a traveling
360
series.
sprints, 410s? What
360.
360s, okay. And these are full-blown sprint cars for the area. These are racing machines.
Yes, sir.
Most of these aren't just out of somebody's backyard. They're solid machines.
It pretty much found out real quick once we got into the ASCS ranks, like how much of a job this actually was. You know, racing on a local Saturday night and working a job. You know, you do what you can after you get off work, and of course, you know, racing pretty much consumes your life outside of the job. And so 2004, I ended up, like I said, going to run an ASCS with David Miller, and we ended up 4th in points, but only, we had to miss one race. David had gotten sick, and at that time, I was still young enough. Nobody would just cut me loose with the.
How old were you?
Truck. I was 21.
And how old are you now?
About to be 41.
And I wouldn't cut you loose the other weekend with my car either. So
I didn't even realize this earlier, but I didn't even realize I'm actually in my 25th year this year racing cars.
Man, that's a long time. Yeah. That's a long time of going to bed race car, waking up race car.
Yeah, no, and that started at probably age 2 or 3.
Probably so. Tricycle motor time.
Yeah.
All right, so now we are ASCS. We are learning things maybe the hard way, realizing as you said, this is a job.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that transition for Ray Allen.
2004 was basically kind of the same thing. My first 2 years, I pretty much relied on David Miller and a guy named Danny Parrish was a crew guy. They were doing all of the setups on the car. So I decided that I wanted to more or less learn, what was going on with the car, because I felt like as long as I knew what was going on with the car, it'd make me a better driver. So basically in 2004 was when at the start of me wrenching on my own car. So we ended up running, like I said, all of 2004, ended up 4th in points, most improved driver of the year, one feature win as far as with the ASCS cars, and then we had another local feature win that they just ran. They ended up pulling a race for Gator that they just pulled a bunch of ASCS cars because there was an off weekend type deal, and they just threw a race together, and we ended up winning that one.
So you raced around that area, you did the ASCS stuff, and obviously things are progressing because you're winning races. People are recognizing the name. People are seeing that things are happening, and that in itself led to some bigger and better deals for you.
Yeah. So pretty much at the end of 2004, David had told me, he was like, man, I want to help you go further. He's like, but I'm tapped out. Like, I mean,
it's expensive.
We can continue to race, but I feel like you're talented enough to catch a better ride. And so he was like, kind of explore around, see if you can put some feelers out and land a ride. If not, then, let me know.
No harm, no foul. If you can do better, go on.
There was absolutely
no hard feelings. Nice of him to tell you that.
Right. So I ended up pursuing Marvin Pearson. And just because I knew of his equipment that he had, and I was like, man, I feel like if I get a shot in a top quality car, not knocking what me and Miller had together, then it was just we were on a budget.
Yeah.
And we did accomplish a lot together in that year. We ran some national races, even ran a couple of top fives in national shows with our wet sumped ASCS motor, and so I'm proud of my rookie year with that.
You basically took a knife to a gunfight.
We did a lot. But in 2005, I ended up landing a ride with Marvin, and I made a promise to him at the beginning of the year that if he gave me a shot, I said, I'll win you at least 5 features and the ASCS championship. And he said, that's a pretty big lot to fill. And I said, I think with the equipment you have, and I think I can get it done.
Did you accomplish it?
I did. 100%.
You were a man of your word.
I got 5 feature wins and a championship.
Exactly 5. You were like, I got to win this one because this is done.
Yeah, I got 5.
So what year was that? What year was that you started driving for him?
That was in 2005.
2005.
It was a 1-year deal. Just kind of this scenario of I was wanting to race a lot, and the guys that I was racing for really, didn't have the funds or means to really travel and race as much as I was trying to.
Yeah.
So
you had to find different opportunities.
I was trying to become a full-time racer, and so kind of in between, I had a few jobs here and there working. I worked for a machine shop, doing some motor stuff. I worked for a tree company cutting trees.
You actually climbed the tree?
I did not.
All right. I'm just curious.
No. Plumbing company. Ran heavy equipment stuff for my grandparents and for another company as well. And so I always kind of had jobs and whatnot in between all of this. And then, but it was always that deal. If there was a race or a 2 or 3 day race that's over here in this state or whatever, hey boss, I ain't gonna be there this weekend.
I think that's still the deal today.
It can be. the good thing I'm my own boss now.
All right, so we're running around. We're doing the ASCS. Now we're driving for the other gentleman. things are shaping up for you as far as experience goes. And you're growing. Your name, like I said, your name is still growing. People are noticing. People are seeing things, and that opened up other opportunities for you.
Yeah. So, like I said, the end of 2005 with Marvin, same thing. We cut the road short. I ended up catching another ride with a man named James Parks, or I'm James Parks.
Hell yeah.
James Parker. James Parker.
Hell yeah.
He's actually from Corpus area,
Well,
but he was up that way. So
I
anyhow,
like the other story better.
sounds good. We'll get to that at the end of this. So anyhow, so I ended up racing for James Parker. Same thing. He was on a budget, but he was willing to do whatever it took to be able to send me on the road and race, basically. So I was racing Gulf South region full time, and then anytime we had an off weekend, we would go run with the Sooner region or the national tour or just whatever we could pick up and go race.
Was the thought process on that, you're only as good as who you race? So if you race the same guys over and over,
I still believe that.
It was just kind of monotone, and then you got to race against other guys, which helped kind of hone your skills.
Yeah.
And also that helped put your name out there too. So as much as you thought you were just out there racing, you were really spreading your wings and getting your name out to a much larger area.
Yeah. It was... I can say this: all of the stuff that we did in those earlier years was tough, and back then it was hard for me to be, I guess, proud of some of the things that we did, because to me, a fourth place finish don't sound good. But when you think about the circumstances and you think about the guys you were racing with, and not being at or not seeing some of the tracks that we went to, and like the first time I show up at it. Like one of them, the tracks closed down, but in 2004 we ran, I think, 4th from 16th in a national show at Joplin, Missouri. I don't even remember what the track was named now, but that was pretty badass. But like I said, looking at all of that stuff, it was pretty neat. Some of the things that we did, I have stories for days. We could be on here for hours and hours. But no, so
this is a one-part show.
Yeah. So you've heard a couple of them. So. The James Parker deal, like I said, I ran for him in 06 and 07. We just kind of bounced around, ran as much as possible, but that it led to a lot of races, but it also led to a lot of DNFs. Just kind of one of those deals. It was all about, go to the next race, go to the next race, go to the next race. And I was still, kind of learning the ropes on, maintenance and different things to do on the cars and preventative things, so that's kind of what led to a lot of DNFs and a lot of it was part failure, just different things like that. But I think in 07 we led like 8 different feature races and something would happen. So that was pretty discouraging.
As they say, you had that monkey on your back at that point.
For sure.
The jackpot was so close, it just yet so far away.
Yeah.
So how long did you run for Parker?
06, 07, and 08. I ran for him. Also in 08, like I said, we ended up losing a motor at the beginning of the season, so money tied up in an ASCS motor was
big deal.
Big deal. So my engine builder at the time was D. Fox.
I believe he builds Howard's engines.
He does, yeah. So anyhow, they had kind of brought the carbureted sprint car deal back to the area. So while we were gathering up the money to get our ASCS motor back together, D was constantly just giving me motors that he would like throw together. And when I tell you his mix match parts, like you pull the valve cover off and like it had all kinds of different rocker.
I believe he put duct tape over the temperature gauge and said, "Don't worry about that."
The first night in with one of those motors, I told him it was running hot. I'd won my heat race, but it was like 240 degrees in the heat. And he's like, "All right." He said, "Go get a Coke and a cheeseburger. I'll fix it." I said, "All right." So been watching races. I come back to the car. I'm getting my helmet and stuff. I go crawl in the car or whatever, and I look up at the dash, and there's a piece of tape over the temperature gauge where I couldn't see it. D's standing there, and he's laughing. I said, "D, what the hell is that?" He said, "I fixed your temperature problem. Run that bitch till she blows." I said, "All right." Well, we ended up winning it and literally pulled up on the slab after winning the race. Blew the top of the radiator off on the slab.
You won. It's all that matters. You won. So the ASCS, obviously, you had some heavy hitters in that deal. You were racing against what I'm going to consider in our area full-blown race teams for the most part. Obviously, you stayed in the ASCS series
for a long time.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit more about how the transition from running the mismatched motors that D was building you. I mean, obviously, you ended up in some really good equipment at some point.
Yeah, so 08, like I said, with Parker, we ran just kind of some local stuff, and then I ended up in between all of those years, I would always get a ride, here and there at some money shows between running street stocks. Went up and ran that big street stock race at Batesville, Arkansas. That used to be 10,000 to win. I don't remember if they still
Street
do that
Stock
deal or not.
Nationals?
Yeah, something like that. Which we actually ended up finishing third at that. So that year I ended up running a limited for a guy and on top of running just some here and there sprint car races for James till we were getting our motor back together. I ended up winning like 23 races or whatever in a limited for Lester Bowles. That was his name. He had Brazoria County Bail Bonds. So at the end of the year, we got our ASCS motor back together, and we went and ran like 5 races, I think, and we ran well. But by the end of that year, he was tapped out, and so I was kind of back to being without a ride. I did finish the year with him, and we finished our relationship together as far as racing. We won our last race together, which it took me 10 years to accomplish it, and it was always my unicorn that I could never win that race. I let it. I don't know how many times. Had something happen, taken away, took out. But I finally won the Texas Grand in the sprint car.
No, the Texas Grand is a big deal in Texas. It's always been in the Houston area. I think it's kind of bounced around to some different tracks now. Mm-hmm. But no, that was the premier race for a long time. Obviously, years ago, we had the Rio Grande Speedway, the Miller Nationals.
Went and ran that.
We had that deal. We had Corpus would run a big show here, but the Texas Grand was kind of its standalone event, and everybody knew if you're going to the Texas Grand, you had to have your shit together.
Yeah.
No matter what class you were in.
Yeah. It's still up and going. They're carrying on the tradition of it. Joey Smith kind of took it over from David Sallwester, and so it's still going. We went and tried to run it this past year. Thought I was going to win it.
we did run it. We did run it. We just didn't finish it.
Yeah.
One of those deals. So 2016, you're running ASCS. I just want to clarify, these were 360 ASCS cars, and you were at the Hockett McMillan Memorial, right? Tell us about what happened there for the folks that don't know. And whose car were you driving at that point?
I ran for David Miller. I went back to racing for David Miller in 2010, and then from 2010 through 2015 was under his banner. And those 5 years is pretty much kind of what I guess stamped my name in racing. We went on a tear there, and we won championship after championship, like 2010, 11, 12, and 13. So 4 years in a row, and then
just keeping the name out there.
Yeah, we raced a lot. We went and ran besides the Gulf South region and national tours and and then so anyway, by the time 2016 rolled around, I took over ownership of the sprint car team, and so I'd started out the year running under my own banner, and I got rid of one of my 360 engines to buy a 410 so I could kind of just do a hit and miss deal. And so we ran some outlaw shows and then was running 360 stuff. And then by the middle of that year in 2016, I guess around June, July, Bruce Griffith had contacted me about going and running, a weekend for him. So I ended up going and racing for him that weekend, and we won first night in the car. The next night that was at 67 Speedway at Texarkana, and then the next night we went to I think Greenville, We ended up running third, I think, in that one. So the weekend's over. He asked me if I wanted to race for him full time. So I was like, well, yeah, I'm down race on, somebody else's dollar and go back to being a full-time race car driver and not having to worry about anything other than just racing.
It was a big opportunity for you.
It was very big. I didn't realize where his head was at the time. I was thinking, well, I'll run, the Gulf South region and then kind of, continue to do the same thing that we were doing. And he had the aspirations of he wanted to, put his team back out on the road.
Bigger and better things.
And so I was like, man, yeah, this is going to work out great. And so we went and ran Knoxville, had a pretty decent showing going in Knoxville, and come back home, got our ducks back in a row, and finished our last Gulf South region race that year. And then we were going to go and run on the national tour for the rest of the season. So first weekend to go, I guess, be considered being on the tour, which it was at the end of the year, was at Lucas Oil Speedway. And anyhow, I was leading the B main. The car ended up having a fuel leak about two or three laps into the start of the race, and then I was just being sprayed with fuel the entire time of racing. And when I tell you methanol is cold, you don't really realize how cold it is until you're soaked in it. But
at that point, you probably realized you were in trouble.
I know. I knew what I was doing, but at that time, I'm back to racing cars for a living, and I'm looking at, okay, I got, at a minimum, I make the show, I got $1,000 payday. I don't make the show, I make $100 tonight. So by that time, I had a little girl, so I doing what I got to do.
Risked it.
I knew as long as I was leading the race and I had control over the situation, I knew how to control the situation. Obviously, for the people that don't know, the exhaust on sprint cars run, right along basically your foot box of where you're sitting. So as long as you don't let off the throttle, it won't backfire, through the exhaust. So I knew as long as I could stay on the fuel, then I would be okay. So led. I'm coming into turn 3, knowing I'm about to take the white. Well, I came up on 3 lap cars that were all side by side. So I didn't have a choice. I knew not to chop off the throttle, so I just barely cracked off of it and started dragging the brake so I could stay in it. But that was just enough that it lit. And so all I'll say is it was 24 seconds from the time it lit up to the time that I was put out. So that was from the time it lit up. I was, still obviously going on the track, got the car stopped, got unbuckled, got out, was rolling on the ground, and the fire crew was already on me. So
safety crew did their job, got you put out.
Man, I thank God still today that I was at that facility when that accident happened, and that's something that it's sad to say. A lot of the racetracks don't take safety precautions as serious as they should. And as racers, and I'm just as guilty of it even today, but we all know what we're getting into as a racer.
We know what we signed up for.
And I know better now that no matter what the situation is, I'll never put myself in that situation again. So that
sometimes we have to learn lessons the hard way.
Well, also that one was a hard one to learn. Just like I said, had I stopped, then yeah, we'd have raced the next night and the next night, and then I would have made money and not cost myself 2.5 weeks in a hospital and skin grafts and missing my little girl for 2 weeks. Didn't even get to see her till I got back home, and so it's just that it was a tough deal.
It's one of them deals. We make decisions. As I say, sometimes we make life decisions, good, bad, or otherwise, but they're decisions we made and we live with them. And we learn from them. You can't always just beat yourself up about them. At at the same time, it matured you a little bit, whether you realize it or not. You know, the decision you made to stay in the gas, as we say, all that stuff has matured you to today. So obviously you had some time for healing. You had some time just to basically get Ray Allen back together. What happened after that deal? After your transition of the healing, after your transition of getting to the point where you're like, yeah, I can go back and do this. Did you say I'm coming back with a vengeance? Did you say I'm just going to come back and make laps? Like, where did we go from there?
I was chasing that dream. You know, I had the opportunity to go on the national tour. So while I was laying there in the hospital and whatnot, I was asking the doctors, you know, hey, you know, how long is it going to take me to get back in a car? And the prediction of how long it was going to be probably March to April of the following year. I didn't understand. I was like, why? You know, why will it take so long to heal? And the reason why it was predicted that way is because most patients don't follow the regimen of what needs to be done to heal properly and in a timely manner. And so I asked them, I was like, man, what do I got to do to speed this process up? And they're like, you're literally going to have to stay at home, stay inside, don't get out, and literally take a bath every day. So
done.
It's what I did.
Tuesday. This is what we're doing.
It's what I did. As miserable as it was, that's what I did. And the prediction was March or April of the following year. And come that November,
you're ready to race.
I was ready to race, and I showed back up at my doctor's appointment. And he said I was clear. I literally left the doctor's office, went straight to a racetrack, knowing that it was a good chance that I might have a shot at being able to race. So Randy Allen and I had already kind of been conversating about me possibly being able to race.
We didn't have anything else to do, so I'm sure you talked race car.
Yeah, I had already been over at the shop getting the car ready to go, and I was like, look, if I can't race, you're going to race. So anyhow, I showed up to the track, said I'm clear, here's my papers, got in the race car, and it was a little rocky. Getting back in that night and going through all the qualifying purposes of the Texas Grand, which the previous year I had actually won the Texas Grand driving for Randy Allen in the 305, and I ended up winning it in the street stock, so 2 cars in the. So
when you strapped back in that car that night, I'm sure you had thoughts, or you just put that behind you, or what?
No, I tried to put it behind me, but the thing I guess that bothered me was like rolling through the pit area. Like going to staging, I kept having like the feeling, like the cold feelings. Like I felt like I was being sprayed in the car, ain't even running. I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'm gonna do this, but I didn't say that to nobody. So, but as soon as we got on the track, flipped the switch on, it was like just bing, it was gone.
Just like riding a bike.
It was. Ended up, like I said, we ended up winning the Texas Grand. My first time back in a car after the accident.
So not only did you just come here and move here, you came here and you actually doing your deal. You're doing your shock business, your Ray Allen Kulhanek, your RAK consulting and shocks. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about the transition and getting used to the Corpus area and some of the stuff that you have going on here.
You know, it was one of those deals of I was trying to figure out really like, you know, what do I want to do in my life that I don't feel like I just want to shoot myself when I wake up to go to work every day. And I'd been around racing my whole entire life. I've had a lot of jobs and I'm capable of doing a lot of things, but I just like...
It wasn't what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Being around racing's always been in my heart. And so I wanted to be able to start my own business and not work for the man, you know. So I started a shock business.
I don't take it personally.
It's okay. I just kind of wanted to do my own deal and help, you know, a lot of the racers and stuff out with the knowledge that I've gained over the years. And, you know, I don't go out claiming to be the end all be all to racing or anything like that, or that I know more than anybody else. It's just, I feel like I have knowledge to spread and to help some of the younger guys coming up, or even guys that, you know, have been doing well but are in a rut, you know. Yeah. I guess I've always been pretty decent at understanding the cars and what to do to a car, you know, when guys can communicate on trying to make it do this or that. So that's pretty much kind of why I started started the shock business and just enjoying working with guys. I was on the phone for about 3 hours with customers a day.
So tell us about Grandma. Tell us what happened with the infamous Kulhanek family reunion on the racetrack.
So, back to the Jerry Jackson deal.
Don't be bashful. She's gonna listen.
Oh, she'll probably have another thing to say about it too. So this was in 2000. It was, like I said, the first year that the limited modified class had started. So Jerry Jackson had ended up with two limiteds built, and so anyhow he had Grandma drive one and I was driving the other one. Basically for a night anyway. That was at the time I was racing for the Browns, running the modified and the street stock, and so anyhow, like I said, something happened in the heat race to my car. I don't remember if it was a flat or something broke, but so I was going to have to start in the back of my heat. Grandma ended up running well enough in hers that she started on the front 2 rows, and so anyhow, she's running second. And I finally get up to third and get behind her, and so I start kind of dicing around, poking my nose in places or whatever with her, and realize I can't get by.
Did you realize it was Grandma at this point?
I knew it was Grandma. So anyway, I'm like, damn it, Grandma, go! Like, one of us has got to win this race. So anyhow, I didn't have a choice. I had to put a bumper to her, so I shoved her up the racetrack or whatever, went by her, caught the leader, ended up winning the race. I win, she finishes third, and like I said, I was still in high school at the time, so I was living at home with Grandma and Papa and my dad, and so she didn't talk to me for about 2 weeks.
A lot of folks say I would spin my mother out to win a race, and you literally moved your grandma out of the way to win a race, but. Yeah. Let's also tell the folks listening. Let's tell the folks listening about Grandma. Demolition Derby. She was decent at it. I understand.
No,
how decent at it was she?
Pretty badass at it.
She was pretty badass at Demolition Derby.
Yeah, she's 13-time Destruction Derby or Demolition Derby champion in the Astrodome, and like I said, back at that time. Figure 8 racing and Destruction Derby, stuff like that was a pretty big deal on top of, racing in general. But so they had like a world championship that was held in New York, and I don't remember what town in New York they went to, but so anyhow, I don't remember if it was Meyerland or Playland Park sent Pawpaw on behalf of them as a figure 8 champion. And then the Astrodome sent my grandma as the Destruction Derby champion. So which back at this time, we actually talked about this the last time we went to race in Alvin. Grandma was telling me that, whatever track it was, Playland or long story, they basically both got $500 a piece sponsor money to go to New York on.
Just to show up.
I told my grandma, I said, how in the hell did y'all go to New York on $500? Well, when you think about the timing, the cost of it, that was actually $500 was a big sponsor back then. So they went up there and did their deal. I don't remember exactly what the results were. I think Grandma ended up like second or third in the Demolition Derby, but I don't remember what happened with Pawpaw's race.
Yeah. No, just the fact that she got to go and participate in that was probably really exciting to her.
Yeah.
I did get to speak with her a little bit at Gulf Coast. She has a ton of stories, and one day I hope to be able to talk to her on this show. She has a different aspect and a different attitude of the racing because of how she kind of grew up in the racing and some of the stuff that she did. Mm-hmm. So I truly feel blessed that I at least got to talk to her and understand that, man, she really does have some pretty neat stories.
Yeah.
Well, Ray, we're glad you can come on the show today. I do have one question for you, the Thunder Road podcast question. You don't have to study for this or anything like that. But today, the question for the Thunder Road podcast is trophy girls or no trophy girls? Which do you prefer? Trophy girls all day long.
That's a long lost art that is just disappeared.
I kind of miss it myself. You'd be surprised.
I will say our most girlfriends, wives, mamas, whatever, they don't like it. But man, that's just a lost art. And bring the bikinis back. We don't give a damn about it. What we really care about is the trophy and the checks anyways, but
They're
it's
just in the way, but at least they're there.
It's something along that line.
Well, Ray, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making a presence on the Thunder Road podcast.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And as a checkered flag flies in this episode, I'd like to take the time to thank Ray Allen Kulhanek for coming on the show and telling us his stories. Also, our sponsors, we could not do this without them. 112 Bodies, Proline Fabrication, Top Hat Signs Designs, and of course, S&S Monuments.